Good evening, everyone. I'm Rebecca Billings, and welcome to our April speaker event for the student chapter for SA at SJSU. We are welcoming Meg OCampo tonight. She'll be our Q&A speaker for the evening. She is an archivist and records manager at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. And prior to joining the SFMOMA in 2016, she worked as a collection archivist at Pixar Animation Studios and as the head of core collection reference files at the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, Margaret Herrick Library. She also got her MLIS at San Jose State University and has a BA in Film Studies and American Studies from UC Berkeley. Welcome, Meg.
Hi, everyone. Great to see you all here and happy to see also some new and familiar names in the attendees. So
Oh, how fun. Excellent.
happy to answer questions
Yes.
along the way.
And I will say this will be a little bit different from the other speaker events because Meg is my supervisor for my internship at the SFMOMA. So we know each other. So it's a little bit different from getting to know people from ground zero, but I've already warned her that I'll be asking questions that I've asked her in person. So please, everyone, this is going to be a full Q&A session. So add your questions to the chat anytime. I'll just get started with asking Meg. I see you had your BA in film studies, but what drew you to archiving and getting your graduate degree?
Sure. So yeah, I have my undergraduate degree from Berkeley in film studies and American studies. What sort of kicked it off was as an undergrad. I majored in film studies because I loved film, but I had zero interest in going into production. And as my work study job there, I started off as a volunteer at the Berkeley Art Museum Pacific Film Archive Film Library and made my way into getting a work study job there. And I learned that that was exactly the type of job and field that I wanted to get into using my interest plus my skill set. Um, so it kind of started from there, my journey into library school. I did not know library school existed until after my undergraduate degree, right when when it was May and graduation was approaching, I frantically just started looking on random websites of places I liked, one of them being Pixar.com. And I saw that they had a 5 month temp job in their archives department as an archives technician. So I went ahead and
Amazing.
applied. And it was there when I got that job that I learned about San Jose State and the ability to do library school part-time while being there. So yeah, that's kind of how it kind of started.
That is what a magical story. It sounds like you found the perfect entryway to combine your interest in art and film and archiving all at once. So you just stepped right into the glam industry and you've pretty much stayed there. It looks
Yeah,
like you did do other, well, would you like to talk about what you did at Pixar?
yeah, sure. I mean, I definitely, well, I guess it's interesting. Like formally glam, I've really done it in my current position at SFMOMA, but I've definitely the majority of my history has been in business archives. So um, yeah, did about 6 years at Pixar, a quick stint at Lucasfilm, and then the institutional archive, the archives at the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. So yeah, I think I mean, we can dive into that later on, but I feel like the foundation that I got in business archives really feeds and continue to feeds my philosophies and decision making at a museum archives for sure. But at Pixar, I started off as an archives technician, and that essentially is just the entry level position at the archives, reshelving DVDs at their reference library. But my primary 5-month position was processing the material created from the art department and story department for Ratatouille. Yeah, the bulk of, I'm trying to like, the bulk of, or I think it's fair to say that the bulk of that archives is the material and artwork created from those two departments, but there's also additional material from the editorial department as well as the executive suite. But started, yeah, they had a cycle of having 5-month positions to complete processing for each production. And I just continued to get extended until that was no longer possible. And they managed to get me after, I think, 2 or 3, whatever the California max is for temp renewals. They were able to get a permanent position for me, and from there I just moved into becoming the collections archivist there.
Awesome.
Very focused on, um, managing the processing as well as the relationships with departments for accessioning and transfer into the archives.
And I hope you got some cool Ratatouille merch.
I did, but it was actually really, I mean, the funny thing about Ratatouille was it did not, there were so many partnerships with like Williams and Sonoma and cookware and foodware, but we did get a lot of merch for it because uh, little, or maybe one could have predicted that food and rat memorabilia wasn't going to be popular. So, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's so good. All right. While you were chatting, we actually got a bunch of questions, so we can go back and forth between talking about your work experience and questions, if that sounds good. Let's see. First question. Which MARA classes at SJSU do you feel are needed for preparing for jobs after graduation? That, I will say right off the bat, is a very broad question because it depends what kind of work you're trying to do. But do
Um,
you have thoughts on MARA classes? Did you take MARA classes?
well, that's super interesting because I was at San Jose State just, and like maybe when Mara first was introduced. So
Uh-huh.
um, I ultimately didn't go the Mara track because I wanted to stay with the MLIS traditional. I guess I'm not an early adopter, though. In retrospect, had I known that I was going to become a records manager, I would have loved to take some of those Mara classes. And I actually have uh, I have looked at the classes to see if it was cost effective to even audit some of those
Interesting.
classes. But I think I do, I guess I'll say in terms of Mara, or just maybe um, a plug for those records management focus classes, that um, it's really, it's really helpful skills and important to have um, when looking into business or institutional archives, because so much of what you're doing is cultivating relationships and understanding what active records are being created, so that um, if you're involved and understand active records from the get-go, it becomes very easy to retrieve those and accession those when it's time to go to the archives. So those principles that um, don't necessarily exist in traditional archives classes, but exist in records management classes, I would advocate for.
Great, great, great. All right. The next question says, hi, Meg. I'm an 18-year entertainment industry veteran as a marketing strategist and copywriter for digital, social, and transmedia campaigns. They're doing a career change and want to stay in the business working for a studio or museum archive. What skills actually matter in the field, and any advice for breaking in?
Super interesting question. I mean, you might know this already given your past, but when it comes to um, corporate archives, a lot of the times the archives have landed within the marketing org chart. So um, uh, there's a little bit of synergy there, and a lot of, at least in your specific instance, a lot that you can have with your background to help mesh that that organizational structure. I'm just thinking of like metadata, tags, terms that you'd be able to bridge in terms of the needs of marketing and then and the strategies of archives. But in terms of what skills actually matter in the field, um, I think, yeah, I mean, it's interesting because the first thing that comes to my mind is very focused on soft skills, at least when it comes to the archive environments that I've worked in, where um, you're usually a small team. Right now, we're a team of two full-time plus one or two interns. So you're doing a lot of different things, and you're interacting with every like some at least one person in every department in the institution. So um, the ability to know your colleagues, get to know what they do, to then ask them questions about what they do, to then um, translate that into what's important to keep in the archives, is something that I go straight to thinking about. Um, Advice in breaking in. I mean, if you already have those established connections within departments that have archives in them, that's always a nice thing to have. So I guess that's just the short version of um, uh, leveraging your existing networks. But in terms of other ways, I mean, I this was not my pathway, but being a manager and also just experiencing it in other institutions. If you're enrolled in a program um, and have the opportunity to do internships um, and volunteer work, it really helps with starting your network within the archives field. I mean, we even if you apply to an internship and you don't get it, you're still in the system. I mean, I can speak for my instance here where we've definitely had interns that we didn't ultimately hire, but we remembered them. And when we had a temporary position opened, we encouraged applications, and we ended up hiring them for that position. So I think it's just trying to um, get that experience whenever it's open.
Great. Thank you so much. I know there's a lot of us who are doing career change, and it's important to know about our transferable skills and how they relate into this new industry. Let's see, we've got a bunch of questions, so I'll just keep on rolling down. What's your recommendations for finding internships with archives? They're new to the field and very enthusiastic to get hands-on experience, which is a great question.
Yeah, great question. I mean, a mix of things. I mean, the San Jose State internship website is very robust and wide ranging. A lot of listservs like Western Archives, SAA, have a lot of good listings as well. Um, at least in my instance, or in terms of what was, um, I mean, I think there's a lot of luck involved in this, but in that instance when I was looking for a job after undergrad, um, I just started listing all the places I was interested in or organizations I was interested in, checking their websites, emailing them, seeing what they had. So that's also another strategy of just thinking about environments or collections you'd want to work in and reaching out to them.
I'll second that and chime in and say that volunteer roles are often much more flexible than internships and easier to get. And I actually did exactly that. I cold emailed a bunch of places in my local area and ended up with a volunteer role at a museum that got me started, that was flexible with my schedule. So they were not advertising. I asked them and it worked out well. Okay, next. This person is curious what you think are some of the top practical hands-on skills that are beneficial to arts-related archival work, especially particularly with born digital records and media.
Uh, Another good question. It's interesting because I don't know how different archival, well, I can actually answer that, but I was going to say, in terms of tools and hands-on skills, archival, to me, archival work is archival work. So regardless of whether it's art or not, it's transferable. That said, um, if we're talking arts organization work, like in the case of, yeah, like a Pixar or an SFMOMA, there is something to think about where of how you think about tagging, think about metadata structure that is very focused on knowing the user. So there's a lot of uh, local local terminologies and taxonomies that you develop for arts related organizations that are that are focused on the user, that is um, not that is very that is different than leaning on to the standards out there like LOC. But so I'll say that, which is not necessarily hands-on skills as much as like going back to the soft skills. But I do think going back to uh, just at least speaking to born digital records and media, I think familiarizing yourself with um, the tools across the board that institutions use. I mean, if you have the opportunity to just start learning how to use Airtable, I recommend it. Um, Project management tools, you'll be on your way.
Great. Great, thank you. Let's see. Would you say that student involvement in student groups is also helpful post-graduation?
I'd say so. I mean, I think uh, I'll um, I I can say that I wasn't very involved in the San Jose State student group um, post graduation, but I was I was an active member in the LA Archivist Collective post graduation when I during the time that I was in LA, and that was really helpful for networking and just um, keeping in touch with folks I keep in touch to this day. Um, I'll also say that I mean I had the luxury of still having in-person classes when I went to San Jose State. So I'm still very close to to the folks that I had classes with. Um, and it's remarkable that I can, I can ask for example finding aids from them now because we're all in jobs and happy about it. Um, but yeah, when I was it transitioned to fully online uh, halfway halfway through when I was there. So it was super important to I was happy to meet people students in person, but also um, totally. I mean that it was the Blackboard then, so just like trying to get folks who is interested to meet up at Pete's on College Ave in Berkeley. That was really helpful too.
I hear what you're saying, and I know that we've had a discussion as a group how important it is to participate in student groups during school, especially in a remote program where we don't get a whole lot of face time with each other. And then it seems that that really transfers into networking before and after graduation. I've heard so much about how important it is to build out a network with other people that you've met and people who are working in archives. I'm curious how you stay in touch with different archivists, your peers across, because I know you know people all over the United States. It's certainly not just in this area.
Yeah, I mean, I think um, ever since I started working at SFMOMA, I've definitely, um, if not just I've been active participant to like active lurker with the SAA's museum archives group
Oh, interesting.
um, at SAA. Highly recommend if you're interested in museum archives. Um, and through that, just um, keeping tabs with folks who have similar jobs to me, just because we're all facing the same exact issues and we're all being asked the same things from the powers that be. So it's really nice. In terms of keeping in touch, yeah, no, it's the the, the text here, the email there. Um, has been how we've sort of kept in touch. But I think the fact that we're all sort of in the same boat in our respective workplaces really helps in terms of trying to compare notes for sure.
Absolutely. Solidarity. Are
Yeah.
there conferences that you recommend?
Um, Good question. I mean, uh, I regularly go to SAA, whether it's in person or through the sections business meetings, which I highly recommend. All of those are completely open to folks to attend. Now it's all been virtual. In the past, it's been the few days prior to the conference itself. Um, as a team, we last week we virtually watched some of the SCA conference, and that was really, I thought a lot of those were really helpful. Um, and yeah, what I've started to engage in with um, the help of my library colleagues has just been learning more about ARLIS, knowing that uh, in the past few years, there has been a lot of archivesy talk and standards being developed and discussed within ARLIS, which is the art libraries organization. So I think there's a lot more uh, things of interest with archives within that library organization too.
Fantastic. Good recommendations. All right. What are the unique challenges you found at SFMOMA versus other places you've worked as an archivist?
That's a great
You've
question.
been there a long time now.
I have been there a long time, so I have to think about what it's like outside of SFMOMA. Um, I think so. This is I mentioned it before, but this is the first institution where I've um, I've uh, been tasked with administering the records management program here, and also where records management was a function of the archives, as opposed to other places. Um, Archives was archives. I mean, there was in um, a lot of your work was after the fact, so to speak. Um, so I think the unique challenges that I've found here has totally been just having that new responsibility of um, thinking about disposition and dealing with finance records that have a, a destruction date, and also just um, being responsible for thinking about how to centralize access for active records across multiple departments. not something you always you're tasked to do in as an archivist in other places. Yeah.
Excellent. So, as you just mentioned, your role has really changed over time, but would you mind describing a little bit what a typical day or week in the archive looks like for you?
Sure. Like, what does my day-to-day look like? It it runs the gamut from micro to macro archives and records management work, and it's all dependent on what priorities are there for the day. So, I mean, if there is a legal request that's time sensitive to retrieve certain documents, then you kind of just drop everything and move on to that. Um, a big part of my job is managing our reference. We do internal reference as well as external reference and provide access to our archives collection externally. So, and Rebecca's familiar with this, we especially especially during shelter in place and the pandemic, we've really leaned in on offering digital digital access to our material at no charge. We provide scans to researchers across the world to do that. So yeah, the day-to-day runs the gamut from learning about onboarding our new employee about records management to scanning material to describing some assets in our asset management system to uncovering posters with Rebecca.
Yeah, lots. I think that's part of the appeal is you get to do so many different things, right? It seems like archivists are often, you wear many hats.
Yeah, and especially, I mean, I think that's what's pulled me into the business institutional archive side of things. Um, it, I love, I love an org chart and I love learning about what people do and how it manifests into material for the archives. And I also love the variety. And I don't know if you like uh, it's just different in larger university archives, for example, where there's a little more specialization.
Thank you. All right, interesting. Okay, thanks everyone for your questions. Keep them rolling in. I'm working down the list slowly. Let's see. Which class, if they're following a similar pathway as an American Studies BA from Cal, which classes and oh, if they're taking if sorry, I'm just going to start that one all over. Which classes, if I am following a similar pathway as an American Studies BA from Cal and interested in film and cultural archives, should I take to be sure, should I be sure to take while in the program? So I guess if they had a similar film background as you did, and
And I'm assuming in the program at San Jose State.
I'm assuming so.
Yeah. Um, Great question. I don't know if they still do it, but in the past, one of the electives was um, with the BAM PFA library. But I know that
I don't recall seeing that one.
that was taught by Nancy Goldman, who has already retired from there. Um, I I'm unfamiliar with the classes right now that are subject specific, but like I said, I think um, uh, the courses and skills are transferable across archives. So your opportunity for applying that to cultural archives would really be in the volunteer and internship space for sure, so that you can get that. Because um, yeah, classes can only do so much, and it's so important to get that specific archives experience.
Great. All right, the next one is it's like four questions in a row, so get ready. What is your experience of different professional archive communities? Are you involved with local archivists, like GLAM specific things? How would you recommend getting involved for folks newer to the field? Can you address some of that?
Yeah, I think yeah, so yeah, I have started uh I've started attending some of the RLIS uh, Bay Area events to see what that community is because uh the arc I guess that yeah the SAA or archive specific groups in the Bay Area has its ebbs and flows depending on who's available or interested in bringing the team together. So much of my involvement with local archivists is through sort of the established network or just attending archives events. I saw that um, uh, there's an archives talk, an archives lunchtime talk at San Francisco City Hall related to their Moving San Francisco exhibition from the SFMTA archives. And so that's always I'm personally interested in that, and I'm sure there's folks there to meet and chat with, and that's kind of just how it starts. So um, yeah, I getting involved or getting to know folks in the field, I feel like is outside of yeah volunteering and internships is looking out for those archives adjacent events and seeing like-minded folks there, and you'll for sure meet someone.
That definitely echoes advice that I've been told more than once about there's different values about getting involved on a more national level, like the SA, and then there's also the value of getting to know people locally. And of course, we have students all over, but whatever archivists are doing in your particular area, it's good to get to know who they are. And if for no other reason, then you get to know what they do, and the chances of you working with them increases.
Yeah, I
Isn't
guess I'll add one more thing
it?
in that I my only experience has been archivists being very welcoming and open to talking. And so I've definitely never turned down a cold informational interview request. And I've done the same. And folks in the field when I was starting out was completely welcome, happy to have coffee or chat with me for 30 minutes or an hour about what they do. So I mean, I don't, I, that's just another avenue too.
So nice. And it's always reassuring to hear. And it's certainly what I've witnessed myself, but I found that challenging to believe when I was a new graduate student. But now that I've seen it over and over, hopefully other people will uh, take that, keep that in mind. All right. Let's see. What technical skills would you say are essential to have besides data management? Do you find that skills like coding help?
Um, that's a good question. I mean, uh, yes, generally speaking, I that's definitely a skill that I don't have primarily because my colleagues also with MLISs who are more in the system administration and collections management and dams world has those skills in spades. I think I know a big topic right now is AI, and I think just general understanding of that of concepts and how that works is super helpful. I know, and I mean, technical skills. I think there's a lot of just uh, aside from flexibility to learning, but the capacity and interest to develop skills with new tools constantly. But just to the in terms of the AI component, from my experience, I definitely me and my team definitely are constantly testing and evaluating the AI aspects of all the tools that we have just because every tool has an AI component and it's really interesting to think about how that's changing our work for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. What advice would you give to someone interested in transitioning into archival work from an unrelated career? Specifically, how can someone best position their previous experience, particular skills, or resume strategies that you would recommend highlighting when trying to make this kind of shift?
Um, Good question. I think, I mean, it'd be helpful to know from where, but I think just what I had said before in terms of flexibility and soft skills, emphasizing cross-departmental work or the ability to work with different personalities, I feel like is something that can be transferable. Um, and I think, yeah, just any project experience of that type of that illustrates that you are detail oriented, and that you're curious. I mean, so much of what I look for when looking through internship applications is curiosity in the actual work. So, because so much of the specific work you learn on the job. So I think highlighting that in the resume or in the cover letter is huge.
Thank you. And thank you for mentioning the internships because I knew that was going to come up as a topic. Um, I haven't scrolled through the rest of the questions, but I'm just going to throw one out there. I'm sure there are many people here who would love to have an internship at the SFMOMA and are curious about other qualities or things that you look for in addition to curiosity that might help them stand out or that might, catch your eye. I'm sure it's not a matter of one particular class or one particular background. And your projects change as well, so the content of them.
Yeah, yeah, so just in terms of visibility on our internship, the Archives and Records Management internship program here at SFMOMA, which is honestly relatively new, but I'm so happy that our HR team has approved it and encouraged it, and we're going on strong, and we're able to open up more positions per semester. Um, but in the fall, um, they can sometimes they're very focused on digitization, and sometimes there's more project specific um, internships that we have. For example, um, in the uh, last summer, we had an internship that was focused on working on our pilot project to figure out a way to create standards and guidelines for object records across the institution. So by that, I just mean documentation on a single artwork across all departments and trying to figure out what exists, what do people find important, is there a way to create a naming convention that everyone or most folks can follow, and what can our systems accommodate in terms of accessing those materials. So, and that'll preview, that's going to be a running internship for us.
Good to know.
But
Yeah.
but in terms of what, yeah, I think, but generally speaking and consistently speaking, um, the the curiosity in the specific internship and the specific institution um, is something that I look for. 100% flexibility because of how we really do everything, like in terms of life cycle of a record. An interest to get that experience across the board is something that I look for. And also, I hope Rebecca feels this way, encourage interns to tell us if there's any skill sets that we can help encourage, like help build on your resume, is something that we encourage. But yeah, flexibility and just, yeah, flexibility, communication, and just curiosity in this specific type of work.
Thank you. Thank you for the details. And also, uh, I personally find it reassuring that projects change. What you're looking for is not dependent on having students having already done exactly whatever it is that you're running in the internship, that it's a learning experience, and that also everyone's resumes are not being screened out by AI keywords. You're actually reviewing all of them. That's nice to hear. All right, let's see. Here's a question. What has been one of the most rewarding aspects of your career in archives? And is that aspect different than what you thought it would be at the start of your career? That's a good question.
That is a good question. I guess in terms, it's interesting because I didn't, it was, it started off as a surprise that this job even existed because that there's this, no one in my family followed this path. So I was not exposed to any of it. Um, so expectations were, did not totally exist, but um, yeah, I think what's been most rewarding for me about the places I've worked and the jobs I've taken within those places has just been how, and especially in my current job, um, I have never been bored. And I think that goes to the variety topic that we've talked about. There's always something completely interesting about the day to day, whether it is a discovery or cracking the code of a pro of a transfer workflow, or even the long game of convincing an individual that it's okay to transfer things to the archives and it happening maybe 6 years later. Those are some of the rewarding moments that I've had, um, or even discovering, like I didn't even start with like discovering something within the archives that we didn't know we had, which is of course that part of it too. So I guess that's kind of the first things that come to mind with that question.
Thank you. Okay, I have to ask, is there a favorite object or unusual thing that you've come across in any of the places that you've worked that you'd like to mention?
Um, I guess I'm always perplexed what to do when we find food in the archives and folks want to keep the food as an object. And that's always a challenge. Uh, and I'm always, I think that was, I mean, I think I definitely went to an SAA panel before where it was a food archivist and like, tell me what you do. I don't understand. Um, uh, but yeah, I'm like trying to think of specific objects. Um, I mean, yeah, I think it's all I maybe because so much of um, the the volume of the material that we have in the archives is either paper or born digital material. So it's extra special when something is happens to be 3D in the material in the archives. So museum store product archives from across the decades is always interesting in terms of seeing what we sold. Physically having items from the 80s and 90s and comparing it to today is always super interesting. Um, uh, love looking at the history of fonts at our museum, things like that. It's always super interesting.
Oh, fun. All right, great. Uh, let's see. How is AI affecting archives work so far, and what do you think we should know at this point? I feel like some of that you mentioned already.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can give you a specific example of one of the many existential moments and conversations I have in my head and then have with my colleagues here is uh, there in so in terms of seeing what AI can do with what we have, um, it's interesting to think about how even if we're talking about um, like a spreadsheet inventory, it's interesting to think how a lot a new way of thinking about how to build that spreadsheet inventory is not necessarily how a user reads it or how that translates into pull down fields um, or, or or field mapping to a database, but how your user set might use AI to ask a question that from that data set. And that sort of, granted, that isn't very different from what you know our search engine companies have already done in terms of trying to figure out algorithms with a single search box. But I was definitely, it was interesting how much I was changing the structure of something as simple as a spreadsheet inventory for accessioning materials or location inventory based on thinking about certain users at the museum asking prompts like, I want to know which drawer has this artist's files from this year. It changes how you sort of structure the fields and data.
I love that. It sounds like you spent a good amount of time and energy sort of familiarizing yourself with what capabilities AI has. Is that from curiosity, or is there sort of an institutional pressure to start adopting AI? Maybe not just at the SFMOMA, but across the board.
I think it's a mix of, I think it's primarily curiosity and also just wanting to be up to speed with all the tools out there available to us. I mean, institutionally, um, there's sort of um, there's an acknowledgement that it exists, and there's a permission to experiment now. So I think that's also helped. Um, but I but with complete structure and um, sort of guidelines on how to engage given what we know or don't know about AI, and also given that a lot of our materials and information is sensitive or confidential.
That makes sense. And I think it's smart to know yourself what the boundaries are of what it can and cannot do so that if you are asked, you can respond appropriately.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. When you started taking on records manager responsibilities, were there resources you used to come up to speed on managing records?
I luckily had um, a so my first position here was associate records manager, and I reported to the archivist records manager, and she was an incredible resource for learning the ropes and experience and knowing what the work has been. So much of my so going back a couple of things in terms of resources. SAA Museum Archives' section has an incredible resource on their website that provides example documentation from various museums, one of them being examples of records management policies and retention schedules. So I heavily relied on that to just copy and paste. And we do it across the board too. And then uh, being in California, the uh, is it the California Public Council has some great documentation um, uh, uh, on sort of the legal statutes relating to nonprofit corporation records. And that's always been a good resource for me when just sort of, I'm just like trying to remember, making sure that I can, we can double check that. But yeah, publiccouncil.org, they had good resources in terms of navigating sort of the statutes related to nonprofit corporations.
Yeah, great. No point in reinventing the wheel, especially when it comes to legal things. All right. Let's see. What are your thoughts on EAD? Is it still relevant? Would it be worthwhile to take SJSU's class on it over an elective like reference and archives?
Um, I'm such a bad person to ask that question, but I'll be honest. Um, coming because my background and experience has been solely in institutional archives, where you, the animators or the curators do not know what EAD is and have certain languages. I think EAD is super helpful. I mean, I think what I'll say about EAD is what I'll say about library school in general. It's so helpful to have the formal training and the foundation, but I don't know how much one-to-one application I do with that in my day-to-day or in the work that I do, since yeah, um, so much of the description is um, more localized. But it, uh, over and yeah, EAD versus reference, that's hard because yeah, I can see pros and cons. Sorry, that was an answer, non-answer, but I'll say that I don't I um I I I left I left San Jose State without doing a EAD or cataloging. I don't know how I managed that, but there you go.
Yeah. All right, we've got 5 minutes left, but we've got a bunch more questions. So let's go. Let's see. What are some trends that you see in museum programming and collection management that students should look into? Hmm.
Museum programming and collections management. Um, that's a good question. I mean, in terms of museum programming, this is like a good plug for our current show. There's a rehang of the Fisher collection at the museum, which is very focused on um, the interpretation of artwork. And so I guess I'll say, and part of the interpretation of artwork is going beyond just the historical importance of an artwork, but also the ability to how to make how to make such artworks accessible on various levels. In addition to that, I'll say that there's an uptick in internal use of archives material. So I think there's something to be said about uh, interest in archives in helping that programming and that storytelling, more so in previous years. Collection management, I'll just say how collection management across departments and across systems is a huge thing right now. So a lot of syncing and integration is a trend.
Great. Okay, the next person previously interned at UCSB Special Research Collections and wants advice for applying for archival positions. Are there particular skills or types of experience that are especially important to have?
Um, I mean, I think that aside from what I mentioned before in terms of skills, I think just having archival specific experience in archives specifically really stands out when it comes to resumes, and especially um, given the market where um, folks coming straight out of um, the program is competing with folks who have been in the field for 10 plus years. So I think really highlighting that archives experience and working in archive settings is huge.
Great. Okay. What is it like to work with different departments, especially in regard to helping them better utilize the archives?
Um, it's great. I mean, it's both challenging and rewarding at the same time. I think um, what it's like is just it. I mean, it completely depends on the person and the department and how, and just learning how they like to how they find material and how they receive it and what they need it for. And so um, a lot of times it's doing something like uploading an example set of assets into Digital Garden and seeing where they all the places you can access it and how you can access it and how you could search across, and them realizing I can't believe we can do this if we just transferred material. Um, so I think yeah, it's super it's what is it like? It's exactly that. It's 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 really a lot of user research and applying that to the systems because it's there's flexibility for that here. So
Thank you for calling that out. I think that's the type of thing that you don't really expect going into this program as something that'll be important in a career, and yet it is. Last question for the day. Do you primarily use Airtable as a project management tool, or do you also use it for database management and creating visual interfaces?
right now so I'll say that for most of the time I've been here, the SFMOMA archives' inventory databases have been Microsoft Access databases, which are just glorified spreadsheets. Um, we're sort of um, seeing what Airtable can do um, for functioning as our for functioning sort of as our folder level inventories, or as a way to accession material. We don't use it as a project management tool. The institution has Asana.
Great. And at that, we are at the hour. Thank you so much, Meg. We really appreciate you coming here and sharing your experience and asking everyone's questions.
Yeah, no, and I'm also, open invitation for more questions. I'll put it in the chat, but my email address is archives@sfmoma.org. So put that in the chat in case, but happy to reach out and answer any more questions for sure.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you for being such a good ambassador for the archival profession.
Yeah,
All
no
right.
problem. Thank you
Thanks,
all.
everybody. Thanks, Meg. All right. And that's a wrap. We are done. Thank you so much. I'll see you tomorrow.
All right, see ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.